Good morning, and welcome to the Threatt Report. I'm Leon Threatt, and I'm delighted, pleased that you're with me this morning to be a part of the Threatt Report. You know, we've been doing this for several weeks now. We were committed to sharing and encouraging and speaking concerning a number of issues pertaining to our nation, the virus, culture, and community, and we're continuing to do that. I'm not sure how much further beyond the election season we might do it, but I am committed to do all I can to encourage, to empower, to elevate others, certainly from a biblical worldview. That's my commitment in all that I do, that I would do it according to the scriptures. A biblical worldview is certainly what I believe we need in our culture, in our community, and certainly in our churches today. So you're with me on this Friday, the 9th of October, on the Threatt Report. Now, give you some information. If you need to go to the website, the last several Threatt Reports have all been recorded. They're documented on the website. And the website is www.leonthreatt.com. If you want to communicate with me, ask questions, make comments, go to the Threatt Report at gmail.com. ThreattReport@gmail.com. Ephesians 4:15 says, speaking the truth in love. I'm committed to speaking the truth in love. And real love speaks the truth. We know that Jesus is the truth and the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of truth. And so we're committed. I'm committed to that. I pray that you are as well. And then St. John 8:32. These are theme and key verses. And you shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free. It's the truth that you know and the truth that you live that brings liberty to life. Jesus is that truth, and certainly the Holy Spirit is the Spirit of truth. Now, bring you up to date on some few things. Coronavirus and some details accordingly. You know, I'm constantly listening and watching for good information to bring a perspective, an insight to this coronavirus pandemic. I heard one of my dear friends or dear ministers in the gospel, she called it the planned-demic. Someone planned and organized and strategized this pandemic long before it hit the nations. The enemy, I believe the spirit of the Antichrist, has a plan, has had a plan from the very beginning to steal, kill, and to destroy, and using the coronavirus as a part of that. And I found some good information. Someone sent it to me this week. It's from a Dr. Rainer Filmisch. That's F-U-E-L-L-M-I-C-H. Filmisch. Rainer Filmisch from Germany. He did an in-depth presentation, actually a legal presentation on the coronavirus. He laid out a very clear legal case showing that this pandemic, this coronavirus, in fact, is and has been a strategy from some key players, globalists, who are committed to dominate and frustrate the world. He made this statement. He said the coronavirus scandal is probably the biggest crime against humanity ever. A crime against humanity. Now, I've posted this YouTube video. Listen, go to it as soon as this program is over. It's about a 60-minute presentation, but it's a legal presentation. In fact, it appears from his communication that there will be, at some point, prayerfully soon, a class action suit against these key players. Now, let me make this statement. These key players are globalists, banks, the World Health Organization, and others participating in this coronavirus pandemic or plandemic, this scandal, certainly centered in China. Let me make this statement. I'm going to say it. Listen, at the center of using this pandemic has been the Democratic Party. I believe for the purpose of frustrating and perhaps even undermining the Trump administration. They have used it. I thought it was interesting. On the vice president debate on this past Wednesday, Mrs. Harris, Senator Harris, used the conditions of the pandemic as a key reason to undermine or displace or remove Mr. Trump from office. And in fact, it was part of their strategy from the very beginning to use this pandemic to undermine his administration. I believe that without question. Now, I believe that Dr. Rainer Filmish will communicate in this presentation the evidence of a legal prosecution, and if not a prosecution, which I hope it will be, these key players, certainly a class action suit by nations and by the people of the nations to hold these people accountable for their actions, because this is hellish. Now, I said and will continue to say this is really about the spirit of the Antichrist. Globalism is his effort to dominate the world, and we see that with the coronavirus. I thought it was also interesting this week, President Trump recovered out of the hospital, back to work, and he made this statement. He said, "Don't be afraid of the virus." And I've been saying that for months. Don't be afraid. Don't let fear dominate your life, because that's the intent behind the coronavirus scare. The scandal is about promoting fear. And if we can get people in fear, we can control them. Listen, this whole scandal is about manipulation and control, about shutting down the church. It's about shutting down the voices of the people. And it's about minimizing your rights as an American, your constitutional rights, your human rights, your biblical rights. It's about shutting these things down to get people in fear so that one can manipulate and dominate them. I've said it from the very beginning. I say it again. It's time for every state to wake up, every believer, every Christian to wake up and push back against this agenda. I've said it from the very beginning. You've got to push back. You've got to keep sounding the alarm that this is a scandal against the nations, and certainly against we who are believers. Churches are being shut down, and pastors are being prosecuted. People are being dragged into jail. And as we've said in the past, California, Governor Newsom there in California has been so oppressive against the church. That's part of the strategy of darkness, to silence the church, to minimize, if not take away your constitutional rights under some preconceived idea that we're protecting you from this coronavirus, this huge monster, this deadly disease. And we've seen from the evidence, we said months ago, the evidence does not warrant a pandemic. We've said over and over again, the numbers of deaths are beneath the annual flu. And yes, even we said weeks ago that the CDC revised their numbers and said only about 6% of the 190,000 deaths were fully contributed to coronavirus. That's part of the scandal. And I want to challenge you, please just wake up and pay attention. Don't be so easily manipulated, and tell others, please look at the data, read the headlines, but also go a little deeper. Look and search for accurate information. Listen, first of all, stop listening to mainstream media. It's filled with lies and manipulations. They're part of the problem. Mainstream media is part of the problem. We've got to separate ourselves from the lies of mainstream media and find accurate sources of information. And there are sources of accurate information, at least information to make you stop and say, wait a minute, is this really what's going on? And I think we will see quickly that we've been duped and we've been manipulated and dominated by a lying, progressive, evil spirit of Antichrist. All right. If you go to the website, leonthreatt.com, and you'll find today's article. We have some good information there about the coronavirus, updating you, keeping you informed. I want to challenge you to keep pushing back. Take off the mask. I said it for weeks ago, and I know I've offended some because, you're supposed to wear the mask. No, I'm not supposed to wear the mask, because the mask, as far as I'm concerned, sends a message that I'm in compliance to a lie. And I don't want to be a part of a lie. I don't want to be manipulated and dominated by a lying spirit, the spirit of the Antichrist. So I've made it a point to not wear a mask. And when I go to somewhere and they say, you've got to have a mask, I said, no, I don't. And and I made a statement to one restaurant, they was insisting I wear a mask. I said, well, if you insist that I wear a mask, then I choose, you can choose not to serve me, but I choose not to wear a mask. And there is overwhelming evidence that the mask is actually unhealthy for you. It actually is unhealthy for you. I believe also that we're going to see prosecutions for governors. I believe in God for it. For prosecution for governors, for placing our elderly in nursing homes, taking them out of hospitals, putting them in nursing homes where they were vulnerable to high percentage of the virus that ultimately caused premature death for many of them. And I'm just hoping families that have experienced death of a loved one in these nursing homes would sue the authorities, often the governor who forced this mandate. I'm telling you, we've got to push back, take off the mask, get busy living, and move forward. Now, let me give you some more things. Boy, I got a lot of things to cover. Recently, this week, the president authorized the declassification of some documents related to so-called the Russia probe that was promoted by Hillary Clinton and her email service. These documents were declassified, and supposedly in these documents, investigator Mr. Durham, who's overseeing the investigation, will show these documents clearly communicate that Hillary Clinton, President Barack Obama, and Joe Biden conspired to interfere and to plot against the Trump administration's campaign. And I just think that he said it and others said it from the very beginning, that they plotted and colluded together to try to interfere with the Trump administration's, or at that time, the Trump campaign. Now, I've submitted a Epoch Times article that will give a lot of details. Go to the website and you get the details on it. Over 1,000 pages were declassified for your review. And supposedly it was documents without being redacted or hidden details, so you can see it in its accurate state. Very important. Do the work. Read the documents, see what's really there, and I believe you're going to find out that much of what the Trump administration has said from the very beginning, that Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, and Joe Biden all conspired against his campaign back in 2015, 2016. All right, here we go. Keep supporting law enforcement. I am a supporter, as you certainly probably aware, former law enforcement officer. I support law enforcement. Wherever you go, encourage them. Buy a police officer lunch. Buy them breakfast. Let them know, listen, thank you for staying on the front lines. Thank you for being out there making a difference on the issues, and certainly defending our communities. Now, voting. Early voting starts on the 15th here in North Carolina. It goes into the 30th. I want to encourage you, please vote, but vote biblically. Vote from a biblical worldview. Vote your values. Don't vote personalities. Don't vote party. Vote for values. Vote on the issues that really matter to us as Americans, to us as North Carolinians. Listen, vote for life. Your vote this year, this voting cycle, listen, nothing is more urgent and nothing is more eternal than defending innocent preborn life. And there is a clear difference between the two parties. One party promotes death, the other party promotes life. It's no way around that. Look at the party platforms. Go to our website, leonthreatt.com. You'll see the party comparisons. Now listen, you've got to get the word out. Talk to family members, loved ones, neighbors. Challenge them on the issues. Listen, don't get caught up in personalities. Get caught up and really become preoccupied and focused on the important issues. One supports Planned Parenthood. One defunds Planned Parenthood. One supports the traditional family. The other promotes a transgender family and the new approach to the family. One talks about religious liberty. The other talks about squelching and silencing your religious liberty. And so it's very important that you vote the issues and get the information out. In fact, if you would do anything, go to our website and forward as much of that information, much of those articles to as many family, friends, and help them to be informed and educated on the issues, because that's what's at stake here in 2020 in this election season. On the website, you will also find we have judges. It's important that you're voting for conservative biblical judges and what they stand for. Listen, it's critically important we find and vote for judges that uphold the Constitution instead of being activists in robes, pushing and supporting their special interest groups. And so it's important that we stand behind true constitutionalists and originalists, as they would often be called. But when you vote, vote biblically. And as I mentioned earlier and have said, please show up and vote. I think this is important because there are certain groups that are planning to undermine, and it's been documented even already, they have shown some irregularities or concerns about mail-in ballots. And so I encourage you to show up and vote. Vote by showing up. That way no one can in the mailing system or can somehow mistakenly lose your ballot or lose your voice. No, show up if all possible. I know it's convenient to just put something in the mail, but I encourage you to show up. You got 2 weeks in early voting, and then you got election day, the 3rd of November. That's 16, 17 days that you can actually vote. Please, in 17 days, you should be able to make it away to the voting precinct or voting ballot booth and put your vote on paper in person. That way no one can steal your vote. All right? So I've given you a lot of good information. Go to the website and you'll find a lot of good information, voter guide. Next week, I tried to have it done this week, but next week I will have my personal voting selections posted. I will post all of the people that I'm voting for. I'm working all the way down the ballot from the presidency all the way down to soil and water. And I will post that on the website. I'm not ashamed to tell you that I'm voting for people who uphold my biblical values, my biblical worldview. Now, let me give you something. We're running out of time. I've been sharing for some weeks on the importance of, or at least counseling the Black culture on a number of issues. And the way I've approached this is that if I was talking to my children, my grandchildren, and how to live life differently and how to move forward, and I shared and have shared some important things. Number 6 of the counsel we will be sharing today, but the first ones I've mentioned in days past, I said first and foremost that I felt like it was important to counsel my family, and certainly those of you who are watching. If I was going to speak to the community of color, particularly the Black family, the Black community, I would say first and foremost, return to God, the God of the Bible. We need to return to the very roots that help sustain us as a culture, and returning to the God of the Bible is at the center of all of that. It's number 2, rebuild the fragmented family. No culture, no community is any stronger than the family. And so the family is the actual cornerstone of a civilized society. Number 3, I said, refuse to be a victim. I don't care what others say. I don't care if critical race theory says that you're a perpetual victim. I say, decide for yourself not to be a victim. I'm not going to live under the controls of what other people think and other people say. Number 4, break covenants with groups and organizations of oppression. I said it and I'll say it again. Break covenant with the Democratic Party, the Ku Klux Klan, the NAACP, the Antifa, and the Black Lives Matter, and any other communist-centered organization. Break covenant. That your loyalty is to truth. Your loyalty is to what is right and proper. Break covenant from these oppressive organizations that have done nothing but hold the Black community back. I said it, I'll say it again. These politicians that hide under the cloak as if they are somehow trying to help the community of color. We have 50 plus years, if not 60, of oppressive works from the Democratic Party, and they've done little to nothing to help the Black culture. And I say break covenant and make your own decision about what's best for your family and your community and for your nation. All right. And then also, we mentioned last week, number 5, elevate the value of a good education. Listen, it's critically important that you're personally committed to a lifelong learning process, that you're devoted to making sure that your children are getting a good education and that they're living life without the boundaries of educational oppression. I believe in education choice. I believe families should make their own choice about how they educate their children and where they educate their children. And these public schools are often failing institutions of learning. And so you need, I believe, to make good choices about good education. Now, today, number 6, on counsel to the community of color, certainly the counsel to the Black community, reclaim the worth of skilled labor and professional trades. I have been involved in this process for a number of years because I believe having a skill and having a trade has such a transformative means to it. It is such a powerful way to break the cycles of poverty for a family and for a community. And historically, it was in fact a way to break poverty in the community of color. Black families as a whole were able to establish a strong middle class way of life by having a skill, by having a trade. It has historically been the backbone of the middle class community. And once again, we've got to get back to understanding the worth of having a skill, having a trade. And so we've got to understand the worth of that. And jobs such as auto mechanics, brick masons, school teachers, carpenters, electricians, plumbers, and nurses, and police officers, all are skills that you can take to the marketplace and trade and do business and ultimately see a higher way of life, or a middle class, blue collar way of life. I think it's very important that we get back to that. And for whatever reason, something emerged a number of years ago that said everyone goes to college and there's no need to learn a skill. And somehow, not somehow, it didn't work. Everyone did not and do not go to college. But let me make this real clear. What prevents you from having a trade, having a skill, and still going to college? Like I mentioned last week, the importance of having a commitment to a lifetime of learning, not just getting a degree and stop. No, you're committed to learning for a lifetime. And so you can learn a trade and still go to college. But look at the value of having a trade and having a skill that you can do business with. I believe that one of the reasons why so many of our young black men are frustrated and black daughters are frustrated and discouraged is because they don't have a trade. They don't have a skill to do business with. What do they take to the marketplace? Just nothing wrong with a high school diploma, but you need a skill. You need something to trade with. You need something to compete with in the marketplace. Whether it's a construction trade, such as electricians and plumbers and heating and air techs. I mean, you can trade with that. You can get a good middle class wage. I went to a meeting in December. It was actually a Christmas gathering, and I was standing there talking to a engineer who works with Duke Energy, and he happens to be in the area of hiring line workers to repair broken power lines. And we were just talking, and I asked him about this because I was very interested in what did it look like for black men and women to do this job. And he mentioned that these line workers made anywhere between $60,000 to $100,000+ a year. And I'm thinking that's a good middle class income. And he said that the Department of Labor authorizes thousands of work visas to those from immigrants, primarily from Mexico and from South America, to come to America to work 9 months out of the year on a work visa. And I said, well, why aren't these jobs filled by black men and women who live here? And his point was, we can't find them. What do you mean you can't find them? They don't want that job. What do you mean you don't? And so he said that we can't find these certified electricians from the black culture to take these jobs. I was irate. I'm like, my goodness, $60,000, $70,000, $80,000, $90,000 a year, and you can't find anyone to fill those jobs. And that's what he said. He had some other things to say about the challenge with that, and I was greatly challenged because I know that that's important. Because families are strengthened and they experience upward mobility when they can provide for their families a good living wage. I've been working with a project for the last few years. It's called the Serving Leader Project. And the goal behind this project is to connect industries with those who are looking for a skilled labor job, those who are willing to be trained, those who are willing to go into an apprenticeship program. And we did one last October here in Charlotte. In fact, we were partnering with 5 high schools to bring in seniors to go through this very similar to a job fair. And these skilled labor industries met with these students. I think we had about 300 or 400 students come to the skilled labor presentation. And I was encouraged by that. And because many of these high schoolers, they didn't know these things were available. I was just so impressed with how much was being offered to high schoolers. And they were willing to take them into their apprenticeship programs. Some of them had to certainly go through a community college such as Central Piedmont, which is a wonderful college system. I can't say enough about how powerfully effective their programs really are. And so many of the industries in this area, in this region, are partnering with Central Piedmont to make sure their people are trained. I was just impressed by, and I am impressed with the possibility of breaking the cycles of poverty in the communities by learning a trade. Now, for those ones that says, oh, I don't want to do that, that's beneath me. Think about this. Think about this. In Mark 6:3, Jesus is called the carpenter. In Matthew 13:55, Jesus is said to be the carpenter's son. In the Jewish family, usually the oldest son takes on the family business. So Jesus would have been the oldest son of Joseph and Mary's family, and he would have perhaps learned the carpenter trade. Here is the Savior of the world going to die on the cross to save humanity, and he learns a trade. Perhaps the trade of Joseph, the carpenter. He's called the carpenter. Isn't it interesting also, the Apostle Paul, the Pharisee of the Pharisee. He is a learned, highly educated, informed leader in Judaism and ultimately in Christianity, and he's called a tent maker. That he was in the business with Aquila and Priscilla as tent makers. He provided for himself. It's recorded in the book of Acts where he took care of his own necessities. That's in Acts 20 and 34, because through his trade, perhaps tent making. My point is, it doesn't have to be one or the other. It can be both. You can do great things, go to college and do anything else, but learn a trade. Pay your way through college. Instead of having student loans, boy, we made some mistakes on that. Learn a trade, then your education has far more value and far more worth. And I believe through skilled labor, learning a trade, you can break the back of poverty in your family and in your life. Learning a trade, whatever it is, find something that you enjoy and you're skilled at and you have some aptitude toward, and develop that trade. You can do anything, but once you learn a trade, no one can take it away from you. So once you get a skill and you get the certification in that skill, no one can take that away. It can always be a way to break the power of poverty and the hold of poverty. You know, Charlotte Mecklenburg, I think it was in 2018, there was a study done. If I had the time, I'd go through it with you. There was a study done dealing with upward mobility. The 50 top cities in the nation, 50 of the 50 top cities in the nation, they looked at the probability, I think it was 2018, the probability of how to move upward out of poverty, upward mobility. Of the 50 major metropolitan cities of upward mobility, Charlotte was the 50th out of 50, meaning that if you were born in poverty in Charlotte, Mecklenburg, you had less than a 6% chance of breaking the cycle of poverty. I'm telling you that the skilled labor can break the cycle of poverty for a family and for a community. And I want to just invite you to counsel to the community of color, counsel to the Black culture is learn a trade, learn a skill, and break the power of lack and poverty. Because once you learn a trade, you have something to take to the marketplace. You have some way to have a promising and hopeful future through skilled labor. I think that's good counsel. I want to encourage all of you to give it some thought, give it some prayer. This is Pastor Leon Threatt on the Threatt Report. I'll be back next week to talk more on the many issues standing before us. Keep listening, keep watching, and paying attention. I'll see you next week on the Threatt Report.